Got some tissues there in the corner if you need them. Take a deep breath and slide up to that microphone. Let me get you to introduce yourself to the jury.
I'm Tracy O'Brien. I'm Michael Bargo's mom.
He's the progeny of you and your husband's name, Michael Bargo Sr., right?
Correct.
Where were you married?
Here in Florida.
How long were you married?
Almost 15 years.
How old were you when you first got married?
Just turned 18.
How long after you were married did you have Mike?
Shortly after I was pregnant when I got married.
And where did you live during that time? You lived in Florida for how long?
For about 6-7 years.
Okay. What part of Florida did you live in?
In Summerfield.
Did you have any family down here, you yourself?
No.
Where was your family?
Michigan.
How was the marriage from the start?
I was young. I thought it was good. But looking back, it wasn't.
What was the major difficulty you could see with Mr. Bargo Sr.?
His drinking.
How would you describe his drinking?
Daily. It was a normal thing.
But how would he act when he was drinking?
Angry. He would explode for no reason over little things.
Did he work?
When he wanted to. He had his own business, pressure cleaning.
What hours would he normally work? Or were there normal hours he would normally
There weren't normal hours.
What about him coming home in the evenings?
It was normal for him to come home late at night.
What kind of mood would he be when he came home late at night?
He was usually drinking when he came home. So he was angry.
Well, what was he angry about, do you know?
Any little thing would set him off. He would throw dinner if it wasn't warm, or if I said something wrong, or if we got into an argument, he would start throwing things.
Where was Mike during all this time?
Usually asleep in his room by now.
How old was he when that started happening?
It was from the very beginning. He was an infant.
What would you do sometimes as a result of that, knowing that he was coming home?
I would get Michael out of his crib and would sit in his room with him until his dad would pass out. I knew he wouldn't bother me if I was in there and I had Michael.
Well, what other kind of manifestations, what other form would this aggressiveness take, other than throwing objects?
He punched holes in walls. He broke out a car window when Michael was a baby in the back seat.
Tell me about that. There was a night he didn't come home?
And I knew where he was. He was at the bar that he always stopped at. And we had a friend staying with us. I didn't have a vehicle at the time, so he drove me up to where I knew he was. And I went in, and Mike Sr. and his mom were sitting at the bar. I don't remember what I said. I said something to him. I turned around, I walked away. And he followed me out to the car, and he punched out the window. And Michael was in the back seat in his car seat. Not even a year old, and was full of glass.
Now, Mike Jr. became a source of push and pull. Excuse me. excuse me, push and pull between you and your husband, did he not?
Yes.
What was the problem there? Describe that.
His dad was more of a friend than a father.
What do you mean by that?
When Michael did something wrong, it wasn't Michael's fault. Or if there needed to be consequence for something, I was always the bad one.
To such an extent that Mike would act out on that, right?
Yes.
Like, for example, it's rough, but the driveway. What happened?
I had stopped at the house I don't remember if it was to drop off or to pick up one of the kids' bikes. And walking up to the house, Michael had wrote "Tracy's a whore" in chalk in the driveway in huge letters for everybody to see. And Michael wasn't there at the time. So I asked his dad why it was there. And he just kind of laughed it off and said, "Oh, I'll talk to him about it." And that was it.
But he would encourage that type of behavior all the time, correct?
Yes.
He eventually bought Mike a cell phone. How did he use that cell phone?
The time that Michael was supposed to be with me, he would use it to call his dad to come pick him up, or when he was with his dad, there were times that I would get messages. He just repeated and filled up my voicemail calling me a slut.
Did you notice any explosive behavior on Mike Jr.'s part as he was growing up?
More so when he got into his teenage years. Little things, and he would explode for little. He got mad because we were going out one night and he couldn't go. He would explode and get mad. After his father moved to Florida and he was living with me, he was out of control one night and just running up and down the hallway in the house, ran out the back door and ran and laid.
How old was he when that happened?
14, 15.
Okay.
And laid in the middle of the street. For no reason.
About the 5th or 6th grade, or rather 4th or 5th grade, he was diagnosed. What was that diagnosis with?
ADD.
And did he go on medication because of that?
Yes, but it was a fight.
Explain what you mean by a fight.
His dad didn't want him on medication, didn't want him on Ritalin. So we tried different medications. His dad didn't think he needed it.
His dad would actually steal the medication and destroy it or dispose of it, would he not? It came up missing.
That.
It came up missing, right? Okay. So he would encourage him not to take it or to take it or what?
He would encourage him not to. He would hear us argue about it, and then Michael didn't want to take it.
Well, social welfare agencies, you guys went to counseling, didn't you?
Yes.
How'd that work for you?
Not too well.
Did Mr. Bargo cooperate in that at all? Bargo Sr.?
Very minimal.
Did he abate or lessen his drinking at all during that?
At that time, he wasn't drinking. He was
There was an event that caused him to stop drinking. What was that?
he was diagnosed with lupus.
And he went on medication as a result of that, correct?
Yes.
The doctor told him not to drink because of that?
Right.
So how did he do with the pills?
He would take too many. He would overuse them. The Vicodin just replaced the alcohol.
To the point to where he was impaired or intoxicated?
Yes.
What about the temper? The violence, the punching holes in walls, did that continue or what?
Yes.
Well, young Mike was older by then. Where was he while this was happening?
Usually in his room or around the house. They were there, both of the kids.
Did you have a drinking problem?
No.
There was other bizarre behaviors. You referenced one time an incident involving a tree. Describe to the jury what that was all about.
It was Michael's weekend to be with me, and he didn't want to be with me. He wanted to be with his dad. So he ran out the front door and he climbed the tree. He stayed in the tree for a couple hours and wouldn't come down.
There were also instances involving a car, wasn't there? What was that all about?
There was a time when, again, he didn't want to be with me. He wanted to go with his dad. And he stopped at a stop sign and he got out, jumped out of the car and walked. For miles, I couldn't get him back in the car.
Did you eventually get him back in the car?
No, we had to call the police.
You became involved with social services as a result of complaints. Who authored those complaints?
Michael Sr.
A lot of them, or just a few of them?
Several, to the point where they told him if he called again, they were going to charge him for filing a false report.
And that was simply an effort to take Mike away from you, correct?
Yes.
What about his brushes with the juvenile law? When was the first time you remember him getting in trouble with the authorities?
We had an argument, Michael and I did, and I don't remember exactly how it went, if I had picked up the phone or if he picked up the phone. Again, he was mad because he had to be with me that weekend. He ended up, I don't know if he hit my hand or what with the phone when he hung it back up, but we ended up calling the police because he was out of control. He wouldn't calm down. He was just exploding. He ended up giving the police a hard time while they were there. They just came to talk to him, that they ended up taking him.
Now, there was a suggestion in previous testimony that at one time they had wanted to refer him to a mental health facility, and instead he ended up going to a boot camp program.
They did have it. He got counseling. We picked a therapist. He was seeing a therapist. He ended up getting in trouble again, and they sent him away to Vassar for a year, and it was the boot camp. While he was there, I did counseling through GrowthWorks, where they worked with the parents.
Now, where do you live now?
Michigan.
And how long have you been up there this time?
Since '98.
Since 1998, how much contact have you had with your son?
Not enough.
Could you quantify it for us?
first time I've seen him in almost 4 years.
What about the father paying child support?
He quit his job and he took a job further up north in Michigan. And he ended up quitting that and moving to Florida. And said that he couldn't work because of his lupus. And he wasn't paying child support.
But he was living with his mother, wasn't he?
Yes,
His mother was paying the freight, right?
I would assume.
Roof over his head. He was getting disability, wasn't he?
He had applied for it at the time. It took a little while to come in.
When was the last time he paid any child support?
He was arrested 2008, I think,
Right.
for because the child support was so far behind. We went to court.
$28,000, I believe.
Yes, it was over 20,000. We went to court, and he explained to them that he had filed for disability and wasn't working. They wiped out his back child support in lieu of me getting disability for the kids.
And did you get that?
The back pay that they paid for Lauren, I did receive. Michael had turned 18 in this time period, and the funds went to Michael.
As far as Bargo Sr. goes, Mr. Bargo Sr., has he ever called you during this period of time that the child was away from you and discussed his welfare, what he was doing, and things like that?
No, every time I would ask about Michael, everything was great. He was doing good in school. I didn't even know that he had dropped out.
So that was just an absolute lie. Father lied to you about that, right? Did he tell you basically that he was bouncing around from place to place, that he wasn't even living at home hardly?
I didn't learn that until a few weeks ago.
Did he tell you that he was on drugs and that he was drinking heavily, your son?
No.
Did he tell you of any efforts that he made to slow this down, abate it, or stop it, or anything like that?
No, my understanding was everything was great.
And that's what he told you, right? And the next thing, this happens. Anything else?
Object to that, Your Honor. That's not a question.
Sustained.
It's your fault.
Objection, Your Honor. Not a response.
Wait for a question, ma'am.
You tried to do the best job you could as a parent, is that right?
Yes.
Where do you think the fault lies here?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained speculation.
I don't have any further questions, Judge.
Cross-examination.
I just have a couple questions. So, Brian, do you need to take a break? Want to talk about maybe some happier times when Michael was a child. Okay. When he was growing up and he was younger, you would describe him as a normal little boy. He was active and playful, right?
Yes.
Okay. And your method of disciplining him and his sister when he was younger was normally timeouts?
Yes.
Okay. And how long would you make him sit in the timeout?
It varied. Sometimes it's just a few minutes.
Did you ever make him sit in his room all day long?
No.
And did you sometimes give him spankings?
Yes.
Okay. And did you leave marks on him when you gave him spankings?
No.
Did you ever hit him in the face?
I did once.
Okay. Well, how old was he when that happened?
15 or 16.
When he was younger, where were the spankings?
On his butt.
And you said you never left any marks on him from the spankings? Right. Did you ever physically abuse him in any way when he was younger?
No.
And in fact, you have said before that you would say he was spoiled as a child when he was little.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And when he was younger and you guys were living in Michigan, did he go out and play with other kids?
Yes.
Okay. So he didn't sit in his room all day with no friends. And did he actually leave your street and go other places before he was 12 years old?
Not unless we knew where he was or what he was doing.
But you took him other places.
Yes.
Okay. He left your street. There was testimony that he never left your street until he was 12. That's not true.
No.
Now, would you describe yourself as the main disciplinarian for the children?
Yes.
All right. And you feel that you got blamed a lot because you always were the one that had to say no.
Right.
All right. And Michael looked at you as the bad, mean parent.
Yes.
And it's true that Michael blamed you for the divorce.
Yes.
Are you the one that actually filed for the divorce?
Yes.
Okay. And during the time that the divorce was pending, you felt that Michael's father told him things he shouldn't have told him about why you were getting divorced.
Correct.
He crossed the line between being a parent and a friend. And you've
Excuse me. Ma'am, when you're asking a question, if you'll respond out loud, please.
Yes. And you've talked during your direct examination about several different instances. The first one being where Michael ran out of the house and hid in a tree. Okay. And that incident you said started because he wanted to go be with his dad.
Right.
He was mad about having to be with you. All right. You just need to say yes.
Yes.
And then you talked about the incident where he jumped out of the car.
Correct.
And you said that incident started as well because he wanted to be with his dad and he again was with you.
Correct.
And then the third incident you talked about where you had to call the police because there was an argument. Again, it was because he wanted to be with his dad and he was with you.
Correct.
So every time he wanted to be with his dad and he couldn't be, he acted out to try to get what he wanted.
Correct.
I don't have any other questions. Right?
Redirect.
There were other times, though, wasn't there, considering the totality of this time period that he was with you, that he was just simply acting out, period, wasn't it?
Yes.
For example, like when he ran out and laid down in the middle of the road, that didn't have anything to do with being with his father, did it?
No.
It was just some unexplained activity.
Right. Either it was late at night. I don't know if it was because he didn't get to do what he wanted to do or for whatever reason. Sometimes there was no reason.
So sometimes there was bizarre behavior for no reason.
Correct.
For example, he started having trouble in school.
Yes.
He was held back.
I don't know that he was held back. It was because he had missed from being arrested. He had missed time.
And when you'd done the counseling, they had told you things about him. Depression, anger,
Yes.
anger management problems, and things like that,
Correct.
regardless of what they were associated with. What happened to his grandfather? You know about that?
I heard that he had killed himself.
I don't have any further questions.
Recross.
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused, counsel.